Everybody. Welcome to our Q2 2023 market report. Let's get rocking and rolling, you punctual people. Thank you for being on time. Super excited to journey through, Gordon, 172 pages now we are up to on our market report. Fantastic. Before we get rolling, love to introduce my very special guest host today, Robin Eccles from our KW Utah Realtors Market Center. Just totally amazing career resume. But as of recently, the last couple of years, she's been our CEO team leader of that market center. Welcome, Robin.
Good morning. Thank you.
Thank you for jumping on and being my entertainment partner on this markets report. I know you've been a part of this for many quarters, but even just shouting out, introducing yourself, what do you love about the market report, or what are you coaching all of your agents in your market center to use this market report for?
No, I'll tell you what I coach my agents not to use the market report for. This is not an opportunity for you to listen to hear if the sky is falling. I've got a hint for you. If you're looking for that, it is. So you can just tune out, go enjoy the rest of your morning. In every market, regardless of the conditions, there are people who are going to transact. And so there are buyers and sellers who are going to need powerful representation. So in talking about the market report with my agents, it's just really looking to be the most educated agents available so that they can advise those clients that are going to transact, and then learning where the opportunities are so that they can go out and get more of their market share, work with more of those clients.
Cool. Awesome. And always a huge shout out to Gordon Payne, our KW Utah Keller Williams Regional Operations Manager. He is the one that does all the work and then serves up the pretty presentation for me and Robin to take the credit. So as always, thank you, Gordon, and all the time you put into this. He was even in the office at 6 a.m. updating some data that recently got released, even just as of this morning. So all the work you put in, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's super fun.
Yeah, we geek out every once in a while. We do kind of enjoy it, but I appreciate all your work you put into it. And just a public service announcement, as always, Gordon makes these very accessible for everybody that attends on here. If you go to kwutah.com, as soon as tomorrow, most likely, click on resources on the top right, then agent resources, then quarterly market reports. It will take you to Google Drive that you can just download all these slides. We zipped through these, really over 170 slides, over 70 sources of very reliable data. A lot goes into this, so we definitely want our agents, our guest agents, and all those guests on here to use this. And also, we record this and put it on kwutah.tv, which just simply forwards to our YouTube channel, so you can rewatch it because you guys know how entertaining these are. So, Robin, we've had an interesting week. Obviously, the Federal Reserve raised some basis points, 25 basis points. I know it's somewhat unpredictable. There could be rumors he still might do a little bit more. And as of yesterday, with some congressional hearings, I guess aliens for sure are real. Should we talk about that instead of market stats?
I think you saved that one for the Q3 report.
All right, we'll come back tomorrow. Aliens. All right, well, let's try and summarize. Here is just your snapshot for the end of June. You can see a lot of the different categories that we will talk about. But right here, new listings are down year to date compared to last year. So the first 6 months really last year felt totally normal. And then we got around that June, July, and that's where rates started going up in some of the most rapid historical raises ever. And we felt it, no doubt. But new listings, we're down year to date, 23.7%. Pending sales, your under contracts are down 16.4%. Closed sales down 22%, which, if you look at just even last year around the country, we'll go over all that data, but we've lost a lot of closings due to the rate increases. A lot of people sitting on the fence. I know all of you on the report, on the Zoom right now, felt that. Days on market, still pretty dang low in comparison, but up 147.8% compared to last year. Median sales price, we went down, we went up. Are we going to go up still? We're going to go down a little, but no doubt we've dropped a little bit, down 7.9% on that median sales price. It just rose so quickly. So I think a little bit of correction was probably healthy for affordability. Percent of original list price, when you sell something, we were in that heyday that no matter what price you put it at, it sold for a little bit more than that in 40 multiple offer situations. But we're slightly down. So 96.1%, down 5.6%. The story of the last 5 years has been affordability, but again, a little bit backwards, down 2.7%. The rates really sent us out of whack on affordability, which everybody's trying to catch up. Homes for sale, there's just more inventory, and we can breathe a little easier, Robin, no doubt, but up 70.7%. And the month supply up 133%, but still 2.8 months, which under 6 months, still very hyper sellers market, especially under 3 months. So we'll go through all of that, and then Robin will chime in and give some of her insight on that. But here, if you haven't been on this report, A, welcome. But B, we journey from all the data points. We've got several metrics, and then we jump back and forth comparing the United States real estate market to Utah market. And then we always challenge you and encourage you to kind of dive a little bit deeper into your county or your city, your marketplace, just to even compare how that looks up at the macroeconomics of everything. But you can see even the drop, we went from 21 to 22, which really was a lot of that last 6 months, but we ended at 5 million homes sold across the country. Times that by 2, there was 10 million sides. But even just over that time period, you can kind of see there was a lot of homes sold in that 5 years. Still peaked though in the early 2000s with 32.2 over a 5-year period, but just a lot of sales. And this is what me and Robert were talking about yesterday, a couple of days ago, just on the drop that we've seen. This is month to month comparing the last 4 years. So look at October of 2020 in the post-COVID craziness. We got up to 6.7 million homes sold in that 12-month rolling period. 6.7 million. You agents were wheelbarrowing your commission checks to the bank. And now we've dropped as far as 4.2 the last 12 months. So we saw 4 million at one point, but 4.2 the month before we're at 4.3 million. So 6.7 minus 4.2 million is 2.5 million homes sold, which is 5 million sides. Have we felt that, Robin? Absolutely, right? So market volume, which Gary Keller pointed this out, which is a little bit of saving grace. The purchase price has gone up so much. We're still projected to have the 3rd highest volume sold real estate market in a year ever in the history of recorded data. Clearly 21 was 2.83 trillion, 2.53 and down to 2.13 is what we think will end up. So even the purchase price kind of going up has really, saved some commission, saved some volume, no doubt. And then you can kind of see how that compared, which it's interesting, Rum, because I felt like we almost dropped a little faster than the rest of the country. And even some of the last couple months, it is interesting that the United States, as far as percentage goes, kind of catches up a little bit. But we were 60,000 homes sold in Utah in 2020, dropped to 55,000. And last year dropped down to 42,000. And here's just your month numbers. So we still can see some seasonality on here. But you see 2020, 2021, the summer kind of popped, which we little popped, I guess, this summer. So 3,600 homes last month, 3,700, 3,100 the months before, but crazy, right? That's the roller coaster we've been on. So home prices. So let's hit home prices again. If you've never seen this stat, this is one of my favorite ones, but this is tracking median price. So median, not average, but median home price across the United States, all markets from luxury to lower price, whatever. But that 4% trend line, pretty much every economist I've ever heard say that a 4, maybe a 5% consistent appreciation is very healthy and sustainable for our housing market, right? And when we really shoot up and we go above that trend line, that's where we start thinking that something is on the horizon for some sort of correction. So at one point we were 21% above the trend line in 2006. And then start dropping, the recession happened. We dropped so far under that, and then we've been climbing. We thought for a minute that we might not get back to that trend line because the Great Recession dropped us so much. Not only do we get back to it, but we, again, really went past that. As of last year, we were 12% above the trend line. So even just a little steadying out, could be healthy. But again, we talked about this yesterday, Robin, the lack of inventory is just, it's hard to imagine that we're just going to be able to get even below that trend line. I don't know. You have an opinion on that one?
No, I agree. I mean, if you look at economists as we were going through the time that we were below the trend line and the concern that we would never get back to it, now I look at the reverse issue and I wonder at what point do we fall back to that trend line, and is that something that will even happen?
Yep. Here's U.S. home prices by month. So you can kind of see each month, and then Gordon's overlaid just the current median mortgage interest rate for 30-year fixed. So you can see last month, the latest data, we ended up at 410,000 median price, 6.71% mortgage rates, which when we get to the payment, we've seen that pop in the payment, right? Wait for it. There we go. U.S. median home payment. So here it is. This is just principal and interest, not including the other escrow. But when you add up the purchase price increase and the interest rate increase roller coaster we've been on, we went from 1170 in 2021 for the median home payment across the country up to 2120, which I know everybody's felt that with their buyers and just how hard it is to kind of swallow that monthly payment. But we'll get into construction data. The reality is the cost to build a home has consistently been riding up, but the low interest rate market we had for so long sheltered that for us and didn't have, really help us come to grips with that. And that rapid increase of rates just hit us quick. But even comparing Utah to that, which I know US is a bigger market, so we're trying to sort of compare apples to apples, but this is a swing, and a lot of times net migration and a local economies, construction and all that could put into this. But we were 27% with that same trend line if we start at the same time from that US graph, 27% above the trend line in 2007. But because we out appreciated almost every market in the country besides maybe a couple. I know Phoenix and Boise were kind of up there with us at different points. But we ended at 510 median price across the state in 2022. But then even 2023, we retracted a little bit, got down to 480. But at one point or another, starting the same trend line, above 67% above that trend line. So we had some correction to do, but I don't think that totally can be apples to apples comparison on that.
And I think that chart, Johnny, really highlights the pain point that a lot of buyers, a lot of move-up buyers that have been in the market for a while are feeling. If you look at, if the average consumer you're working with has maybe been in the market for 10 years, back in 2013, we were close to that trend line. So now for them to be so drastically above that as far as price goes, I think it's good when we can see the data that backs the emotion that our clients are feeling.
Yeah. So if alien technology does exist, let's go back in time, buy as many rentals as we can in 2011, 12, and then we can come back and just sell them all, right?
That's the kind of strategy I'm talking about.
Here's your month to month for Utah home prices. Again, you could see we kind of bottomed out in January. We peaked in May and April last year, 2022. We kind of rode that down fairly rapidly. Some of those price corrections, I feel like that, in my opinion, was led a lot by builders. Builders were really aggressive on price cuts and concessions to try to get rid of some of their inventory. But we've kind of been going up. We ended last month at 495, and again, overlaying that 6.71% mortgage rate last month, which this is, I almost want to take this out because this is the one that was such a swing, right? 2021, Utah median payment, same calculation, $1,537 in 2021. $3,125 last month. Crazy. Save your Starbucks coffee money, right?
No more avocado toast for anyone. Yeah, we're looking at double the median house payment of just 2 years ago in 2021. So it's wild.
Yeah. And me and Gordon debate the Federal Reserve, speech, reading between the lines, all that sort of stuff. But typically when we see a market correction, a lot of times the housing market is kind of what puts us into some of these corrections. But really, we feel like kind of the victim at this point. Like our housing market, I know is cruising, but it really was an intentional thing to try to slow not just the entire economy down, but it really did hit the mortgage payment, which we've got to figure that out. So here's an overlay of Utah and United States purple. And then Utah, you can see is the teal or the blue, 510 to 480, and then 410 for the United States. But it's just so weird how close we were for so many years. We were even underperforming in the early 2000s. very affordable in Utah, but just no doubt the coolness of Utah. We make so many awards and reports of how awesome it is, and the secret is getting out, I guess, Robin. They
Yeah,
keep
somebody spilled the beans and now we're all dealing with the repercussions.
Yep. So here's your annual appreciation across the United States. 2021, 18.2%. Just that year, you pump trillions of dollars in the economy. People are feeling good. They're buying stuff, bidding prices up across, the economy. 18.2 is a big number to jump in 1 year. 10.2. As of year 2023, year to date, we're kind of flatline, but just barely 0.2% backwards. So, we don't really I personally don't want to see depreciation, but if we could just really slow appreciation or even hover there for a minute, let incomes catch up and let everybody kind of get acclimated to the market that we're in, I think that could be healthy for us. But again, I normally like to get into predictions. This market report, I'm going to stay as far away from them as possible because, again, every other day I'm like, we're good. That soft landing's coming, or the other side of me, the next day I'm like, oh, I don't know. It might get a little worse to figure out this affordability stuff. But here's Utah. Again, we jumped up 25.7%. 25.7%. You buy something for $200,000 at the beginning of 21. At the end of it, it went up $50,000 in equity, which again is that K-shaped economy we talk about, where if you own stuff, you wrote it up and you're not too in a bad spot right now. If you didn't own anything before those years, like it feels like the markets ran past your ability to catch up, right? I think, I can't remember the stat, but it's like 60% of first-time homebuyers can't afford something nowadays. Like it's getting worse and worse, right? But even our correction down 7.9% so far this year, even though we've kind of gone back up the last month. Inventory, it's trickled up. Still, we know that we are drastically underbuilt in the state of Utah, in the United States. We'll go over some of that data, but as of year to date, 2023, we're at 2.9 months of US inventory. So that you can see that dotted trend line. We've always considered a balanced market at 6 months. Anything below that is a seller's market. Above that's a buyer's market. I always say how many dang houses I had to show back in 2008 and 9 and 10 before my buyers would buy something. We didn't really have that luxury recently, but even if we get to 4, 5 months, like is still a good balanced career for our real estate agents, right? But here's a month to month. You can kind of see trickled up a little bit, but we kind of been at that 2.8 months all 4 of the last months, 2.9 before that, 3.4. So even the way we started, we've already gone down a little bit just year to date.
But if you look at 2020, though, look at May of 2020 and 4.6% and how fast things appreciated.
Yeah.
And things were flying off the market.
Yeah, that March, April was just so unpredictable. We didn't know what was going to go on. The market is just, jobs, all that sort of stuff. We'll see a lot of that post-COVID as soon as it hit everywhere, just kind of some of the ramifications of that. But here's U.S. pending home sales index. So anything above 100, we consider it an expanding market. Anything below is a contracting market. So we really were still in a kind of an overall contracting market last year, which was primarily the last 6 months, overshadowed the first 6 months of last year. But we've dropped to 80 on that index. You'll see a lot of index names that they usually kind of set a baseline at 100, which they consider kind of just a normal average. Whatever the chart may be saying, anything above that's expanding, anything below that is kind of contracting or getting a little worse. But you can see the pending home sales index on a month-to-month basis. So we're down to 76.5. 76.5. So you can even see just like the comment Gordon made right after COVID, just we went from 110 to 70 in a 60-day period. It felt like it was just coming to a halt for a second. And here is the completion. So when we say we're underbuilt, we believe, based on that 52-year average, we should be somewhere around that, 1.2 million homes built every single year to sustain the growth of our country. And we've been underbuilt. We overbuilt, which potentially caused the recession with some of the subprime stuff. But we really overcorrected on that, and that's where that lack of housing units completed has come in the U.S. Right, and I've heard stats anywhere from 5 to 7 million homes underbuilt right now. But if we had 5 to 7 million more homes, that would totally complete that housing shortage. But I know there's a lot of opinions on that. And then here's even U.S. new single-family housing starts on a monthly basis. On a rolling number. So 986,000 basically the last 12-month period.
And the goal is to be above that 1,000 range just to sustain what we've got now. So we've really got to be above that to solve the problem.
Mm-hmm. Which again, it's common sense. It makes sense. We just got to build more houses, but there's tremendous challenges in the building industry: labor costs, supply costs, land costs, red tape, with cities and counties and stuff, just getting things approved. Like there's been intentional things that have kind of slowed them down too, right? And this is the Chem C. Gardner Policy Institute. They did several presentations to some of the realtor associations, but they track pretty dang accurately just total households, total number of houses and condos and all that in our state. And there was 2 different independent people that were going over what their outlook on shortage of housing units, specifically in Utah, from their independent research, and they were pretty dang close. One was like 30, one was 28,000. So right now we're probably anywhere from 28 to 30,000 homes underbuilt in the state of Utah, which is primarily, reproduction and just our, us having kids and growing families. But then the net positive migration from people moving out versus the amount moving in is always more moving in. Somewhere around net 50,000 people a year is kind of where we average. So that's why, the projections of housing units coming online and even some of that growth rate, we still predicted getting worse. Potentially by the end of 2024, we could be 37 to 40,000 homes short in Utah. So if you can go build some high quality, cheap houses, not a bad time to go do it, right? And here's by county, which is awesome. You could see over basically that 2011 to 2020 units built and then new units needed in that same time period. So I was surprised by this data when I saw it, because you could see Utah County, we're roughly 15, 16,000 homes built, underbuilt in that time period. Salt Lake County is what surprised me, right? Salt Lake looks like they kind of nailed it. On building what they needed. Washington, same thing. Washington County did a pretty decent job, and depending on how people move, throughout the state, could skew these numbers. But here's the showing index. So I'll just read this. A higher number means an average home receives more buyer visits in a given month. All index values are scales relative to the initial index of 100 for January 2014. Is where they set that baseline. So like when this goes down, it just overall means showing activity on homes went down, which towards the end of the year, I know a lot of even our listings we were tracking had a little less showing activity, which started concerning us. And then, turn of the year, springtime, you kind of always pop a little bit too, with some seasonality on that. Winter's over, holidays over, but still pretty healthy showing index numbers.
And John, how much do you think this is impacted by a longer time on market? My thought is if you're on the market for a shorter period of time, less showings to getting an offer and going under contract. So I'm curious how much that comes into play with our higher numbers now.
Yeah, because you look at early 2022, right, with how low our inventory was, how fast things were selling, and that being a high index of just more showings. Clearly putting all those together created a chaotic, fast moving market. So even though we're in the 200s with inventory going up, days on market, that might not be as good as that number with a low inventory market, but you're spot on with that. But it's better than the 100, I guess, right?
We'll take it.
Annual months of inventory. We'll get to month. This is Utah annual months of inventory, 0.9 in 2021 on average. The whole year, less than 1 month of inventory. 2022 popped, doubled, but still 2.1, and year to date we're at 2.8 months of inventory. But this is where, just look at those 2021, 2022, and the early months of the year, 0.6, 0.7. how many of our agents wanted to quit because of like, if you weren't 5 seconds responsive, you know, to offers or writing things, like you got left in the dust, right? So I think us going up on this is tremendously healthy for our mental health of our agents, right?
Yeah, I think it's tremendously healthy for our mental health, and also gives agents a chance to really flex their skills, differentiate. It's really hard to show your value as a listing agent when the property is on the market for 2.5 seconds. But when it's taking those skills, taking a little bit more time, that helps keep us from being replaced by AI.
Yeah.
And
Well, and if I don't-
realistically, we're not in a healthy market still.
yeah.
We're still skewed toward the seller, which makes it really difficult on the buyer's agents.
Yeah. Well, if Gordon doesn't have a slide for it, and then I mention a stat, it's usually made up, just kidding. But there is a stat out there of people that purchased homes the last 2 years, how many are currently regretting that purchase just due to the speed that they had to get in and the payments they were paying, the prices they were paying and stuff like that. I think it was as high as like 1 out of every 2 buyers had remorse in what they bought because they kind of felt the pressure of the market to go beyond maybe what they normally would have done in a more healthy market.
I remember looking at that stat, and then I've been really curious as interest rates have changed and those payments have gone up. I would love to see another survey and see how many of those people that weren't happy with the home that they bought now are feeling pretty great about the fact that they purchased a home at that time.
Yep. And maybe it's probably product remorse, but probably financial positivity is what's been,
Products a lot more when the finances look good, though.
Yep. We've got a couple rentals that are under 3% for a rental non-occupant investor rate. It's just crazy that like the time that we had to get those rates, right? Here's new listings coming on the market, which again, we haven't seen the drop that the US has in proportion kind of that, but we peaked at almost 70,000 there in 2018, 2019. A little bit of drops, but clearly sitting at 60,000. So 70 to 60,000, not as dramatic percentage wise as the United States, but still drop, right? And then you see month by month, seasonality's kicked in a little bit better, which is great. But 5,200, 5,200, 4,200. So even July, hopefully we're getting close to where we were 2022 even, but. And then percent of new residential listings sold. So this is still good data, but this is a month by month number. So like how much of the inventory that came on the market also sold. So that like when it goes over 100%, I mean, basically the number of listings that came on the market in 1 month, we sold that same number, and we probably sold some pre-existing inventory. So you can see like December 2020, December 2021, like really ate into some of that supply of inventory beyond what came on the market that same month. So even that 61.4% last month is where we ended. So just we're building that surplus of inventory, which is hopefully putting us in the right direction. And the percent of new residential listings sold, WFR only 61.4, 63.4. And Gordon always likes me to mention this. We have tried so hard to get those numbers to not overlap in the spreadsheet, but they still do. So you have to read between the lines a little. And then Utah homes for sale. So look at 2008, right when I got into the real estate market, when I got my license, 2007-ish, we peaked at any moment. There was 33,000 homes on the market, just crazy amounts of inventory, a whole year of inventory. And I say that we used to show 10, 20, 30 houses to buyers before they even wanted to make a decision. So speed sped up, but still 10,000. Not too bad, but even our 19-year average, 18.3 thousand. So even if we keep adding inventory like we have the whole last year and a half to the same level, we still will end up being slightly under that 19-year average. So we got some room to go on that to get back to that average number. And then you see even just month by month, what is that? 10,177 last month is what our home for sale inventory was, which is almost exactly where we were 2022 same month. So 2778 there, February 2022. Like that was just, it was crazy how low we got. Even Utah County, we were sub 1,000 homes on the market, which has never happened before. Homes for sale year over year just compares year over year. of that inventory. So just the number of homes on the market grew 80% last year. We're up 70% year to date from where we were even 2022. And then pending sales. This is where we saw the drop. So even the listings inventory has been going up. Our pending sales, which affect our closed transactions, have significantly dropped. Our peak, the last little bit was 62,000, but still 2013 was our record. But we were down to 40,000 last year at the end. And you can see compare the blue with the red, we're already pacing, pretty decently below where we ended last year on those pending sales, right? If you add up all those numbers. And then US days on market. So US days on market, we're still trying to get an exact number on this, but when we compare days on market in the United States, that's usually without including the under contract period. When we talk about Utah, they typically do count the under contract time period, but there's a little lack of data. So these aren't necessarily the best apples to apples, just the way that they track days on market in the different sources we have. But 18 days on market still across the US before it goes under contract. Average days on market, you can see here, so 57 days on market, which again, 12-year average, 54. So we're kind of right at the 12-year average when you take the excess inventory, add it to the no inventory phase that we had, and then month to month. So we're still trending down. So we peaked in February of this year, and we're already down as of last month, 46 days on market, including the under contract period.
And that days on market report is one that I would have a screenshot of that, share that with your sellers. This is a great way to give them the data early on when you're listing so that you're setting proper expectation. A lot of times if they've been watching the market just based on what they've seen happen in their neighborhood in the last couple of years, it's easy for them to get restless really early. And so to show them, hey, when your neighbors sold, this is what the market was doing. Now this is our days on market. So we don't hit the panic button until we get to this point.
Yeah. I heard a good suggestion once when people are reading books. Some people just read books for entertainment purposes, even like technical books, but I heard a cool suggestion that after every chapter, you should write in the book, what is the one thing that I'm going to use from this chapter and commit to do? And I know some people are on here and this is great data, but almost every different category, you should be translating to that. How does that affect your business? What skill sets did you be to develop based off this? And again, what percent of our population of realtors across the country have had their license 3 years or less? Like, it is a pretty big number. And knowing that, you probably know the market that they've only lived in. They probably don't know how to do effective seller updates or have processes of effective seller updates. So again, when it goes beyond a week sitting on the market, you've got to have very professional, effective seller updates, proactively coming in. So each one of these categories should probably be dictated to develop something inside your business. Which the story of the last 12 months, no doubt, is mortgage rates. So you can see all the different averages. If you look from 1972 to 2020, that little green dotted line, we've averaged the last 50 years 7.81% interest rates, right? Everybody's heard that. But even if you just look at the last 3 years is a 5.97%. So we are kind of floating right around there the last 12 months on average, the last 30 years. But if you look at the historical average from 2012 to 2021, 3.8, just historical. Just look at this. It goes all the way back to 72. We just never have lived in that environment. Somehow banks were still making a bunch of money. So I have hope we can return there, but I personally don't think it's going to be very quick, right? And I know when you look at projections, do you know what category of industry is the most optimistic? It's always realtors, right? Like, we always have the most optimistic projections, and we just have to be careful the way that we communicate that with people. I really do not think we're going to see rate decreases this year. If you would ask me like January, I did think, but it's definitely going to get pushed into next year, or who knows, right?
Well, I think you did ask the question in January, and I remember you were asking leadership and some of your top agents, and we had a mastermind and did the same exercise, and across the board, everyone was really optimistic that we were going to end the year with rates lower than we were. And I agree. It's based on everything that has been said after the last hike. think we're in for one more hike, and I don't think we're going to see any kind of a decrease until next year.
Yeah, what was that March? We had 50 of our top agents from Keller Williams across the state in the room. And I asked that question, I'm like, who believes rates will be lower than they currently are today by the end of the year? 100% of people voted that. Yep. And then here's your 30-year fixed actual rate mortgage. Year to date sitting at 6.43 on average this year, 2022, 5.34. And then you can kind of see on a month to month craziness, but look at that mountain we just climbed in just a handful of months, going from 2.68 up to 6.9. We saw a little bit of reduction towards the early year, and then we kind of climbed back up. Normally when they have votes of basis points increases, a lot of times we're ahead of the curve. The market kind of already has predicted certain things. So who knows where that 6.71 will lie, but my hope is that is worst case, right? But it could go higher. At one point, Gary Keller said, you know, when the market says, or when the news says 5% at that time period, that they could go up to 5, think 7, maybe even 8, but you know, we're getting close to what he even said. So here's your 15-year versus 30-year overlay over a weekly interest rate. So even just as of April, you know, a little bit of increases here and there. 30-year fixed rate rates versus the Fed funds rate. And typically when the Fed raises rates, it is not an apples to apples comparison. You guys have probably learned a lot about the Federal Reserve the last 12 months, but you could even see how close we were in 2006 and 7 to the Fed funds rate, and then the 30-year fixed rate median mortgage rate across the country. And then even as they just continue to drop those rates, when we were trying to recover and get ahead of that Great Recession, there was almost a 4-5% gap from mortgage rates from where the Fed funds. We were virtually at zero for what is that, 7-year time period. Went up a little bit. We dropped it back down to zero when COVID happened. That was one of the levers that they can pull. But again, we're getting pretty close in gap. So 1.6-ish is how far we are from the Fed funds rate to the mortgage rate. And then a bunch of other stats on the Federal Reserve, because a couple of the levers, no doubt, is the rate, the Fed funds rate, and then also buying or selling mortgage-backed securities. So the Federal Reserve, you know, they'll pack it, you know, people pack up, banks and institutions will package up some of those mortgage-backed securities. And then the Federal Reserve has primarily been one of the #1 buyers of that. So you could see we peaked in, what is that, like maybe March-ish of 2022. And we've already dropped, what is that, 200 billion? Is that number 200 billion, Gordon, that we've basically sold of those mortgage-backed securities?
Yeah. And that's just basically trying to tighten everything up, slow it down.
Yep. And again, this is just in their portfolio mortgage-backed securities. But if you look at total Federal Reserve assets, you know, 8.9 trillion, 8.7 down to 8.3 trillion. So they've definitely got rid of some of their assets, but then you also see that overlay of the Fed funds rate as well.
And they're trying to slow this down because every time they pull back too quickly, the stock market just freaks out.
Yeah.
So he's got a lever that he's trying to just slow down. It's a delicate dance that he's got.
Yep. You can kind of see historically when they raise that Fed funds rate, their assets start to go down, or they start selling some of those mortgage-backed securities. When the Fed funds rate drops, even significantly in 2020, they start buying more of those assets. Not always correlated, but you can kind of see what happens on those. So let's keep talking about the mortgage market real quick. One of the great stats Gordon found several quarters ago is the annual Mortgage Bankers Association. That's the MBA purchase index, includes all mortgage applications for the purchase of a single family home. It covers the entire market, both conventional and government loans and all products. So this is all based off an index on the amount of mortgage applications coming in to apply for mortgages, right? And again, that index is set at 100, and then you can kind of see the MBA index. So mortgage market, we know this already, and we'll show you refinances because Gordon found that data finally too, which is great. But just the number of applications coming in for mortgages has dropped 50%, basically 50% in a couple years. I heard the stat that at one point at the end of last year, we had 12,000 licensed mortgage loan officers in the state. And because they renew every year, and it's a lot faster, whatnot, that they dropped to 8,000 after the December 31st renewal period. So clearly half the business dropped out on purchases from the applications, and then also just the number of LOs, which is interesting. And then
Hug a
here,
lender.
go ahead.
Just hug a lender. It's as rough as we've got it right now. They've got it rougher.
July 27th is officially the Hug Your Lender holiday for the United States. Okay. So here's even weekly, the trend lines. And again, 2021 peaked at 348. That's when we should have been a mortgage person, right? Robin, great time to be mortgaged the last couple years. But here's even mortgage credit availability. And there is a, somewhat of a correlation on deposits and banks and stuff like that on their ability to lend, a multiple of the deposits. So even as deposits gone down, lending and credit availability, the Fed funds rate, if it's just more expensive, you qualify for less. So there are variables that have happened on this, but clearly there's just less mortgage credit availability over the last couple of years. And it's not even sometimes a regulation, whether we're in a loosening or a tightening phase. We haven't really been necessarily in a tightening phase. It's just part of just what's been going on with the market and available credit. And you can kind of see just on a month-to-month basis, we're floating right at that NSA ratio, right at that 100, 97, 101. So here's your refinance, which again, we went from, I've heard mortgage companies, almost every other loan at one point they were doing was a refinance versus a purchase. And those rates went up so fast because so many of our homeowners and rental property owners had low rates. The refinance market just like, just a screeching halt. And you see how far peaked it went up. Right there, 6,418. The amount of refinance applications that were coming in was just outrageous at that time period. And then just really, we're record lows right now, all the way back to 2006, as far as this goes, just on the number of refinances happening or the applications coming in. Foreclosure activity and rates. So for foreclosure filings increased 15% in the first 6 months of 23. That figure is up 13% from the same time a year ago and up 185% from the same time period 2 years ago. You see a lot of agents kind of posting on this, it's not the same, correction that we had last time, primarily because of foreclosures. Even these bumps up, Gordon likes to point out, but even these kind of bumping up and some of that data being out there, Gordon, what was your theory on that because of the moratoriums?
Well, yeah, and this is the crash grow slide, right? Everybody's, the market's going to come to an end, blah, blah, blah. But we didn't have the foreclosure filings because the government prevented them in 2020. So yeah, they're going to be up 185% from 2 years ago. Duh.
Yep.
So
because it was almost a year-long moratorium, right?
Yeah, and I think in some parts of the country, they're still on. Yeah.
So some of those that normally would have just naturally happened in that time period are just getting kicked to now, maybe a year
when
something.
Those moratoriums are finally expiring.
Yeah, which slightly reminds me of, after the Great Recession when they did a bunch of the tax credit for first-time home buyer activity and stuff like that. It worked. Like we saw more buyers getting in the market, but over a time period, what we realized was it was kind of just buying buyers from the future and getting them to buy now, even though it didn't necessarily create any extra buyers once, time had kind of played out. So same thing, if that moratorium wouldn't have happened, we still would be incredibly record lows on foreclosures, which is, I think primarily just because of, we got fixed rate mortgages on almost all of our houses across the country, but then the equity that's been created too just gives them options on what to do if they have to sell, right?
And the interesting thing in the US is the rest of the world doesn't have 30-year fixed rate mortgages. So, it's kind of like commercial where they have to reset every, 5 years for a home. So we're very, very lucky in the United States that we've got that. In Canada, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of years for them.
Yeah. 70 was it 70 or 80% of mortgages in Canada were originated in the last like 2 or something years, similar to us, because the rates dropped. So everybody was doing it, but because they're on adjustable rate mortgages, primarily 5 years, they're projecting, what is it, 2025 or something, like 80% of their mortgages are all going to adjust. So, if rates stay high and we don't figure some out, like even Canada could be like a ticking time bomb on those adjustable rate mortgages. And we've been through that, right? And we really are, I think one of, I don't know how many, I think it was 2 or 3 countries in the entire planet that have the mortgage products that we do. We have been incredibly lucky, miraculously lucky on our ability to do that. U.S.
Another one of
affordability.
those slides, sorry, before you move on, that is another one of those slides. I would just say, hang on to that, screenshot it, save it. It is such a great visual and data representation of a concept that I think we find ourselves explaining to clients constantly as far as what's different about this market. Why isn't this going to be the same bubble bursting that there's a lot of fear around? So hang on to this one.
Yeah.
Print it off, put it on your pillow next to you while you sleep.
And your clients are listening to the Crash Bros. And when you pull this slide out, it's like, 185%, but this is the reason why.
Yep. I just, when I hear of a source in the news media that is just an outlandish source of data that they want to go out and present just to create that shock value of entertainment, like this is one of the main reasons why we want to do this, because we need to be the source. If you're not educating your clients and your database on truly what's happening in the real estate market, someone else is. And I can promise you someone else is most likely not going to be as great of a source as you yourself. So condition yourself to absorb this. And even just me with my own real estate team and some of our database marketing, and we talked to our executive team, like we've got to do a drastically better job and increase the frequency of information that we're putting out to our client lists, right? U.S. affordability just totally down in comparison. 2012, we popped at 203 on that HAI home affordability index ratio. And clearly on average dropped 99.5. But if you look month to month, we continued to slide downwards. And we saw a little bit of rate reprieve, just early in the year that kind of came down, even though prices were kind of still going up. But there's only really 2-3 mechanisms on this, right? Is what does houses cost? What is the median purchase price? And what are the incomes of the households, right? And the ratio that gets created from that. So for us to truly get back to that, either prices have to go down, interest rates have to go down, or incomes have to go up. And they're playing with all those levers, right?
And then when you're talking with your clients that are feeling like it's not affordable for them to buy right now, it's important to know which of those levers they're sensitive to.
Yep.
Typically, it's not going to be just across the board. There's some part of that equation that feels the most uncomfortable, and that way you know what you're problem solving and developing some strategy around.
Yeah. And Utah basically has the same mortgage rates as everybody else in the country. Our incomes, actually have been a little bit better than the country's the last several years, but our prices have outpaced the United States. So that's why you can see our affordability calculated the same way has been lower, right? It's less affordable in Utah when you run those metrics. We got as low as 64 actually in October of 22. Because rates just hit so fast, prices started correcting, which you started seeing affordability just sort of go up. We got back up to 83 at the beginning of the year. And now, we're going back down because rates have kind of gone back up and prices are slowly going up a little bit too.
And I've been using this exercise with my sisters because we're looking at getting her to move. And there are things on the market that she didn't really even think about, maybe a townhouse or a larger detached townhome, FHA, assumable loans. She just thought she was locked out of the market and there was no possibility. And I just pulled some random stuff off the MLS in 5 minutes, took them over to her and said, here, look at this. XXX, this is what you can do. And this is a 5-minute exercise for her. And she felt so much better after because she was so distraught that she was not going to be able to afford anything. And there is still some great creative financing out there to get somebody in a home.
Yeah. FYI, I did tell your sister she could move into your basement if she wanted. So I don't know if she told you that or not.
The offer's already there.
All right, so that's kind of the real estate market. We'll hit investment properties. We'll talk a little bit about just some more construction data that we pulled. So let's jump into investment and rental properties, that type of stuff. Here is Utah's yearly average rental rates based on county. So you even see, which I bragged about for a second, 2021, Utah County rental rates were higher than Salt Lake County, but you Salt Lakers have passed Utah County back up last year. Salt Lake County 1623 was the average rental rate in that county. You can see then it's Utah County, then it's Davis, Weber slightly lower. Rental rates, some of the rental data is one of the harder categories to find. So we're still looking for some more sources on this, but those are at least some of the 4 main counties in the state. And then Gordon tracks this religiously. I don't know if you know this, but he is a rock star investor himself. So I appreciate him grabbing this data. But here is the rent growth year over year. So Salt Lake, because they had to catch up and pass Utah County on that last chart, they went up 24.75% rental increases. So even $1,000 went up to what, $1,250, $1,300 or something just in a year period of time. Probably historically the largest rent jump in Salt Lake County, which is crazy. You can see some of the other trailing counties on that. But either way, we've grown rent, which has made affordability challenges a little bit. But again, at the end of the day, when you buy something, it's more expensive for whoever owns it. Who do those costs typically get passed on to? It's always the customer. You know, I give the Walmart example. When stuff disappears or people are stealing it, who's paying that? It's all the other paying customers. They just like regulate all those losses over the other customers. So clearly rent is been going up. And then here is the last 4-year period and the last 2-year period on rent growth combined. So you see Weber County actually has the largest 4-year jump, 63.4% of rent increases. You see even Utah County last 2 years up 7.1, Salt Lake County 9.4. So Salt Lake City average rent. So Salt Lake City has the best data on this as far as product types. You see studio, 1-bed, 2-bed, 3-bed, 4-bed, which year to date, the second from the right, you can see a 4-bed on average as $2,749 year to date rental rate, a 3-bedroom rental, $2,282. And then the HUD, which we'll talk about, but the Department of Housing, they have all sorts of programs and assistant programs and stuff, and they've kind of basically had to regulate what their version of rent is. If they end up paying in some of those assistant programs rent, they're well behind. They have not caught up with how HUD measures what the average rent should be that they're willing to assist with or whatnot. So they're $400 and almost $50 behind a 4-bedroom unit in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, and that's because they use the data from the last 5 years to get those numbers, which isn't keeping up in this market.
Yeah.
Again, because we've underbuilt, and what they're building is not affordable housing.
Which even like loan conforming limits, like I do think they've done a decent job trying to catch up, but there was a time period I'm like, they are so far behind on what they put in those loan conforming rates just because we appreciate it pretty quickly. But the government's not known to be slow at things, so I don't know why we're even talking about this. So cost burdens, which again, here's a big one. So this is share of renters in the orange, share of renters that are cost burdened. So they're spending more than 30% of their income on the housing costs. So you can see Washington County peaks just barely at 49% of renters are cost burdened, spending more than 30% of their income. Crazy. And then you see also just the blue is the number or the share of housing units that are renter occupied, which I didn't know this too, but Cache County up there in Logan, 36% of all housing units are rentals. You know, clearly that's a little bit of a college town that might help a little bit, but Davis County being 23%, Utah County 31%. And then here is just the, one of the things that the state puts out, the Housing Coalition. This is basically the 23 housing profile across Utah. There's a shortage of rental affordable homes and available to extremely low income housing, which again, that low income housing brackets where we've had the most shortage usually in the country, whose incomes are at or below the poverty guidelines. So right now we are projecting key facts, 65,032 renter households that are extremely low income. And we are currently short of 43,623 short of rental homes in that affordable available for the low income renter. So we've got to solve that, right? We definitely have to solve that. Here's something they just went over Mega Camp. They haven't updated this year to date, but this was as of the end of last year. I know some of you have seen this. Just what's the difference between renting and owning, renting and investing? So basically, if you own something that you bought in 2012 to 2022, buying something on average, the median prices and that across the country, you would end up with $234,000 in equity. If you rented over the last 10 years, and the difference between the rent that you pay and the additional cost that it costs to own something, and you saved all of that amount and invested it in the stock market, you would end up with basically $106,000 of net worth. But if you rented and only saved 10% of that additional cost that a homeowner normally would pay, and you only save 10%, invest in the stock market, you would end up with 66,000. So again, over time, I know sometimes you'll see stats that's like 1 year, 2 years, renting may be cheaper than owning, but I've never seen a stat over a long period of time that owning does not significantly surpass the wealth. Like the average wealth, even in the country, of a homeowner versus a renter is like continued to divide and become a bigger gap.
And if I'm not mistaken, that also does not include your tax write-offs.
Nope.
And that's a slide that if that's not in your buyer's presentation right now, especially if you're first-time home buyers, make that happen. This is data that they need to be looking at, especially as we see the affordability with buying become more difficult. They've got to understand the reason it's worth the sacrifices that they're making for that.
Yeah, totally. Here's United States rent growth year over year change just across the whole country. And this is a rolling kind of 12-month number. So even as of June, the rent growth that we've had actually finally got to 0% across the state from June to June, basically. But you can kind of see that late 2021, early 22, how fast rent was growing across, everything else, the whole inflation debate. Here's your month over month, which, just 1 month compared to 1 month, you'll see a lot bigger swings up or down. And then here is US new build for rent. So units that usually were specifically built for rentals, not someone that bought a house, moved out, eventually put in rent. So a lot of apartment construction, some of those projects. But you can see 28 years below the 48 average. 48-year average is 2.88 million. Is that million, right, Gordon? Of rental units completed every year.
Yeah, that's 2.88 million.
So we've actually been doing pretty good at that. But again, that shortage from 1991 to 2015, the shortage that was created still shows the demand for apartment complexes and stuff, even what people were paying, some of these capital groups, big investors paying for apartment buildings, and how low they'd go on cap rates was just crazy because of the shortage that we've had in some of those rental units. And then here's your rental vacancy rates. Utah's in purple, United States is in the teal or the blue. 5.8% is where we were last year. 4.5 is the data that we have across the board of rental vacancy rates. Balance is 7%. Gordon and I still contend that these still seem a lot higher than what these numbers are higher than what we believe. I think we believe 2-3% vacancy truly, right?
I think we're in the 3% range in the populated areas. I think the non-populated areas is what's pushing this up.
Yeah. Yep. Kansas. It's all Kansas's fault. All right, let's talk about the U.S. economy real quick. GDP, unemployment, real wages, definitions, and some inflation. GDP clearly is a huge thing. This is gross domestic product. This is all services and products across the whole country added up to just one giant trillions type of number and the growth. So normally we want to see GDP growing because that means our economy is growing versus shrinking. 2022 still was a positive growth year. You can see COVID year drop, but we totally recaptured that and then some in 2021. We normally want to see this at maybe 2%-ish, right, Gordon? Maybe 3?
I think 3.
Okay. And then here's annualized by quarter. So just this was one that Gordon finally was able to get the updated reports because it just barely came out this morning. Quarter one, we were up 2%. Quarter two, we were up 2.4%. And they always go back quarters, which is super annoying for Gordon to have to keep checking back because they'll revise the data as it gets more accurate post that quarter. So even quarter one, did you say that it was actually higher and they revised it just barely this morning and it
they revised it down, and this 2.4% is a pending number. So they'll update that over the next couple of months and it'll either go up or down on our next quarter report.
And the basic definition of recession is 2 quarters in a row of negative GDP is what they call a recession. And sometimes you have to look at this and kind of just feel, what's your gut, opinion on this? Like the fact that we went up 2 and 2.4% the last 6 months with how everything's kind of felt like it slowed down a little bit. It is surprising to still see those positive numbers, right? And then here's also usually why they won't tell us that we're actually in a recession. They keep changing the definition slightly, but just the job market, the unemployment being so low is still so positive on the data that they're putting out is why they still think that soft landing is a high potential. But here's a monthly number. So we've been floating around the middle 3% unemployment always. I always say this, I had an economics class in college that the macroeconomics professor basically says we should always be around 5%. There is just always about 5% of society that's employable that probably should never have a job just because they're such crappy employees or whatever. So the fact that we're under 5% means that we're still kind of at the really bottom of the barrel. There's a lot of job openings still out there, even though they've decreased a little bit, but just finding good candidates for, open positions has been a struggle the entire last 2, 3, 4 years, right? And then here's job openings, which is great. I appreciate you finding this, but the blue is millions of job openings in the United States right now. So even this still is surprising to me, as high as it still is, but we've been floating around that 10 million. At any given moment, we have 10 million job openings unfilled, seeking someone to come fill those job openings, which is crazy high of a number, right? Which is what drove that number, the unemployment rate, down so far.
Well, and you've also got the boomers exiting the peak of that last year.
Yep.
So that's also what's driving that.
I'm retiring. U.S. Census region job openings, right? So here's May 22 versus May 23. So you can see the West right there. West percent of job openings has decreased the last 12 months. Basically, this was only live and updated up until the end of May, but we've dropped 20%. So the number of job openings have decreased 20%. Northeast down 21%. Somehow the South, still decreased the least in job openings. And then percent decrease in job quits, which means, we talked about the Great Resignation for a while, which is kind of being declared that it stopped, that people are really kind of hunkering down in their jobs. They're not jumping from one job to another or quitting and finding another job. You continue to kind of see those job quitting, specifically in the West. We've done pretty good, down 13% on the change in job quits.
And I'd anticipate seeing our unemployment numbers going up before we see rates going down. That's one of the factors that I'd be watching for, because I think when we hit that point, the Fed will decide that they've done their job and we can start heading the other direction.
Yep. Which that was, the debate of Congress for a while. It's just, what do we actually have to get unemployment up to, the 4, 5, 6, 7% to actually curb inflation? So the fact that they haven't really touched the job market and unemployment, because again, when unemployment goes up, people are willing to work just for a little bit cheaper. You can bring that cost of labor down, which overall could bring prices down in most categories, right? But when the job market's healthy and they're trying to keep the job market healthy so we don't have unemployed people in the country, they're single-handedly trying to get that inflation down by just making things more expensive with the Fed funds rate, right? Like they're deliberately trying to do that while protecting the job market. And have they ever been able to do that totally? Like, not really, but like, if this data is accurate, they're doing a decent job, I guess, on that, but we'll see. U6 versus U3. So purple's U6, blue's U3. So the different unemployment numbers, because U6 basically includes, the purple number includes underemployed, marginally attached, and discouraged workers. I don't
That's
know how
like
you
regional
describe that as
directors for
numbers.
Keller Williams.
None of them. It's actually a negative number, total satisfaction. Okay. And then here's just a month-to-month bar graph version of that. So if you include some of those discouraged or underemployed, people that maybe want more hours or something, that's where it bumps up 3% in the unemployment number. Which I think yesterday were we talking about builders, right? We haven't really seen a reduction of that yet. And even though the number of homes built, sold, it's almost like a lot of the construction industry somehow has kind of held on to it. And if we don't see something drastically change, we could start seeing the unemployment in that industry kind of bump up a little bit, right?
Mhm.
Which could be healthy to some degree. You know, I built my house in the worst time because everybody was just like crazy busy, you know, and people were walking off jobs for $10 more an hour here and there. But here's the annual labor force participation rate is the number of employed and unemployed workers divided against the civilian population. So basically United States, 62.6% of the civilian population currently employed, which, you know, also includes retirees. But here's even age demographic that Gordon was talking about a little bit, but 25 to 54 years. Here's your labor force participation rate by age group. And then 38.5% of 55 years and older. So a lot of the retirement population, but still 38.5% of the age group still employed. And then here's your income growth, right? So United States real average or hourly earning month over month increase. So you can see even the last 4 months still showing positive increases, even though it just hasn't felt like that because of everything's more expensive, inflation, all that sort of thing. So even those people on their checks are making a little bit more in proportion, it doesn't feel like it, right? And let's hurry and hit inflation. A lot of these categories, most of you have been on before, but CPI, the headline, the core, flexible, sticky. For time's sake, we might zip through a couple of these, but here's inflation. These are the two big ones we always talk about. Gordon, you're welcome to chime in, but there's the inflation rate that includes energy and food. And energy and food are a little bit easier manipulative, right? Like, and they're more volatile, typical. So when they're included, it could go up faster or down faster. So we peaked in the yellow at 9.1%, which everybody was panicking about. And if you include energy and food and whatever they're doing for that, they've actually made a significant decrease, getting closer to that target of 2%. So we officially were at 3% inflation, including energy and food. But when you remove that, that's what we call core. That truly probably represents you know, what is happening with the cost of goods, you know, and inflation. So we have dropped, but when you look at, we peaked at 6.6 and dropped to 4.8, that we haven't seen that move as much, right? And a great example that we talked about just yesterday on why it can be a little bit more manipulative, like Biden, his administration, they actually, I don't know if it's a record, but they have tapped into our oil reserves that we have in the United States almost more than any administration because of some of the chaos going on in the world and the Ukraine war and some of the Saudi Arabia stuff, blah, blah, blah. When we tap in the reserves and we kind of flood the market with some of our just stored oil to bring prices down, yeah, it's working. We're bringing prices down. We're running out of reserves, and it's kind of artificial, non-sustainable thing, right? Like it's kind of just throwing a little bit of, you know, trying to put out that fire. But that's where the core, I know the headline, Gordon calls this the headline always, that makes the news because the government wants to show progress, but the core really probably feels a little bit better. Are we making progress or not number to look at?
Yeah, and the Fed is starting to look at the core more. Well, they always look at the core more, but they're actually talking about the core more based on how they're going to raise or lower again. And that was his big thing yesterday. He didn't like that the core did not come down as fast, and they're looking hawkish at doing another rate increase because of it.
Yeah, which the Fed probably looks at the core most likely on a lot of their decisions. If Tony Stark would just make that free unlimited energy that's clean, it would solve all of our issues. And then here's inflation kind of overlapped. You see again, Target, we really want to try to get to 2%, but here's some of their projections, by 2024 that we'll get that, the CPI down to 2.3, and then core, they're showing a drastic recovery on their projections. But again, that's what's going to tell the story on what the Fed does or not, most likely. We've shown this, but Gordon updates this as well, from 1989 to 2023, adjusted for inflation. So basically a car in 1989, adjusted for inflation, would have cost us basically $37,000 in our today dollars back in 1989, which now it's $48,000. So the real change from 1989 is 28.59% increase in just the cost of a vehicle in proportion to, all those things. Gas gone up 47%. Price, right? So this is where we've talked a lot about, but the actual cost of a home, even inflation adjusted from 1989, it's gone up 77%. Like to build and own a home truly has gone up significantly the last, 30 something years. But mortgage, this is finally a positive number. I think for every time we've ever talked about, that's been a negative number because the mortgage rates being so low have like totally hidden the rising cost of housing. So even it being up 4.54, but when you compare it to 1989, they had really high interest rates, like upper, double digits type of thing. So of course, the mortgage hasn't gone up that much compared to that time period. And the wages, that's one of the challenges, up only 19.34%. And here's just a bunch of other categories to put in perspective over the last 22 years. Who would have guessed hospital services leading the nation on just affordability increases, just crazy amounts of cost rises. Fancy buildings, doctors, all that stuff. TVs, remember the old TVs 20 something years ago? Like it felt like buying a car back then, but TVs incredibly more affordable after 20 some years. Toys have gone down, computer software, cell phone services.
And Johnny, that's a good slide. You and I talked a little bit about a rolling recession, that parts of our economy feel like they're on fire and other parts of the economy feel like they're not on fire again.
Oh,
and it seems to be going back and forth. This year, it's hospitality services again.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's trying to get their vacation and they've stopped buying goods.
Yep.
And in the next couple of slides, you're going to see that.
Yep. So here's even just by category, the CPI 12-month percent change. So you see energy, specifically fuel, gas, maybe some of that conversation of the reserve stuff, like we've gone down year over year. Interest rates clearly up, real median home payment clearly up, rent growth slightly down, median home price slightly down, which all plays into that CPI. And then flexible and sticky. Flexibles, including some of those easy, more movable, category. Sticky, doesn't. So a little bit more sustainable number you'll see. Either way, we're trending downwards in all these, which is positive, but just, is it fast enough? No, probably not, right? Gordon had a former career of just manufacturing, producing, a lot of the different categories there. This is the producer price index, just on, what some of the pricing categories, 12-month changes on that. Real personal consumption expenditures. Gary said, 2 years ago, he's just like, for us to truly get inflation down, you just have to think about you personally. Like, are you stopping buying stuff? Are you stopping going on the vacation? All that sort of thing. So the fact that we continue to see real personal consumption expenditures going up, it's a behavioral change that most likely we would need to kind of really curb some of that inflation, right? Because the less people buying, demand goes down, supply will go up, and then if supply goes up, prices goes down. Simple economics. So we've got to move some of that.
And you can see that we did actually decrease over first quarter, and first quarter was adjusted down again as well.
Interesting. Market-based personal consumption excludes food and energy. So again, the food and energy has kind of like been slightly deceiving on that number, but still a trend downward, but overall still up a positive number. And then Gordon puts this in there too, consumer debt. We love credit cards in the United States and debt and consumer debt, but we're at $1.253 trillion of consumer debt right now. Record high. Annual personal savings rate. So out of your disposable income, what percent of that disposable income on average across the country is being dedicated to savings? Clearly after COVID happened, everybody panicked and they just socked their money away. Like they just were sitting home and socking it away. We got back to buying stuff really fast instead of saving it. We've had a little bit of a trend upwards the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And I think part of that's saving rates have gone up, which have been a little encouraging, but still, we've got to get that number up. We've got to put our average US citizen in a better position. And then commercial make deposits. So this is the amount of deposits they've got. This is what's made the news as those deposits go down. We're down 7.1% as of last quarter. We clearly popped in 48% there in Q2, which is a lot of that stimulus stuff. They got it, hoping that people would spend it, and immediately they actually just put it in their savings account. So deposits went up. Then they started buying things again. So deposits went down, and less deposits means less lending ability for commercial banks. And if they don't predict it and try to get ahead of it, that's where a bank can become insolvent. And Silicon Valley go out of business basically. Manufactured durable goods, new orders, 288. You can see there been going up. So it's basically the orders that the manufacturers are receiving. Purchasing managers index, same thing. Above 50 is expanding. Below that 50 is contracting. So we've kind of been in that purchasing managers contracting phase over the last, maybe 12 months. Gordon, explain this to us.
So this is the manufacturing index. So a purchasing manager is going to pay close attention to this to see where things are heading, so they're not producing too much for inventory. And you can see the rate of change and the month trend. Clearly, again, the K-shaped recovery, part of our economy is expanding and our manufacturing base is slowing down. So again, it's really difficult to say that we're in a recession, but parts of our economy really are.
Yeah. Because one of the worst case scenarios for a lot of these product-based businesses is carrying extra inventory. So they're doing everything they can to project the demand of just overall what people are going to be buying, right? And if they don't contract, if they're predicting a contracting of sales, manufacturers, if they oversupply, like that's where you just lose money and, prices really start getting out of whack.
Yeah, and I mean, look at our imports, down 8-month trend.
Which is probably global politics really involved in that too, right? Us not getting
and we're onboarding. So we're starting to reshore so much here between the United States and Mexico, which is a good thing for us, I think.
Yeah, bring a little bit closer to home, I guess. Advanced retail sales percentage. So it's kind of some of the projected retail sales percentage increase, 0.5% in June. And then here's the U.S. Index of Consumer Sentiment. So they must do just a whole bunch of surveys on consumers. How are you feeling? And we've been climbing a little bit, right? Towards the middle of last year was probably the low point. We ended at 64.4 on that index. And then misery index, which is a combination of inflation and unemployment that Gordon found, lower number is better. So we peaked right after COVID, like the misery. Unemployment went up so fast. Inflation started kicking in. So that was like record highs there. We went down immediately as we recovered. We went up, but like the fact that that's gone down to 6.5, that's pretty healthy, which I think is primarily all employment market, job market based. That's been really healthy. And here's
really quick with the satisfaction, consumer satisfaction. We talked about this yesterday. I think a part of that is that everyone's just sort of settled down and gotten more used to what's happening in the market. So it doesn't have that jarring feeling that it did as we first shifted. And then Powell did talk about the fact that the headline inflation is down so dramatically that is what a lot of the consumers are feeling. And that gives them more optimism about the market.
Yeah.
We just had sticker shock with how fast they raised the rate. So it just, even if nothing changed, giving us just a 6-month time period probably just gets us a little bit more acclimated and just be like, all right, dang, here's the new market.
And they did that the fastest in history.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a huge shock.
Okay, final stretch, 10 more minutes overview. We'll just hit Utah real quick. Again, a lot of just great positive things. Utah just continues to do low poverty rate. We're still the youngest median age. 8th most favorable annual employment, third highest labor force participation, just so many categories that Utah does a great job. But here's at the end of May on some of those same categories, but by industry, you can kind of see 1-year job change. Leisure hospitality continues to recover. Awesome. But you can see financial activities, which even mortgage officers might be in there, but just growth versus financial activity shrunk a little bit. And even by county, unemployment rate growth. And the non-farm, so if you remove farm employment, kind of just how those growth rates of just total people employed in those industries and stuff like that have changed. Unemployment, we continue to be lower than the United States forever. Basically, we always have a healthier job market. Last year, 2.1. We finished at 2.4% unemployment, just insane lows. We got down to 2.3, 2.2. We got to 1.9 at one point. Overlaid with that, here's even the health of the industries. Top right means it's expanding, it's improving, it's just growing those industries, which leisure, hospitality. You can see financial, this one's surprisingly trade, transit in Utah, but even construction, right? It still is showing that it's expanding. It hasn't moved to that really contracting phase necessarily. Quarterly gross GDP, this is at the end of the last year. Real GDP. So again, Utah just continues to get bigger on our Utah gross domestic product. Same thing. Some of these numbers are only accessible on a very delayed basis.
Yeah, I was hoping that this one would be published today, but it wasn't. So we only have through Q4.
Yeah. Which again, you can see Utah for the most part usually is just a little bit above the United States personal income growth. So Q4 last year, 5.7%. But let's hurry and hit construction. Kind of our last category. We showed you this before. 13 years in a row of just underbuiltness. We should be at that 1 to 1.2 million home starts. So this is home starts. Here's residential starts in Utah. So you can see units started versus building permits pulled. But look at the last month or two. Again, this is a delayed source for us. But we've seen less permits pulled over the entire last year, which is why less units are coming online. Here's residential.
These 2 slides, Johnny, I know you don't view this, but I love this slide because it shows that we're not building the affordable single family homes. That the next slide, we've moved into condos because the building permits versus the units.
Yeah, totally agree with that.
So Ochre Shadows pretty much is not being built again.
Yeah. And this was a great one we pulled from another economist report that we saw. This is a little delayed, but you could just see, Q1 2022 from Q1 2021, like how much the cost of all these different categories of your home increased. Which, Robin, thank you for telling me to build a home in that time period. It was really affordable. But again, just crazy. 44% lumber increases over that time period in 1 year. Crazy. And they haven't released the new data on this, but I'm assuming most of these categories have trickled down a little bit, but we're still up significantly in a lot of categories. And then shout out to Cody, my director of sales at Red Sign Team shared this with me this morning. This is fantastic. So this is cost recovery from interior remodeling projects. You probably have sellers ask all the time, well, what if I painted my blah, 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 or redid my kitchen? What is the percent likelihood of recovering those costs? So again, hardwood flooring, from when they pulled this data, end of 2022 is 147%. So if you do hardwood flooring, you're going to recover all that and then some. Adding a new bathroom or a kitchen upgrade, actually, for every dollar you put in, you only get 63 cents back. They hadn't updated this report for a while, so it's really cool to see the new updated data. This is a great one when you're having those staging or ready to list type of conversations. And then here's on the exterior. So roofing, garage door, you actually get your dollar back. A steel front door, fiberglass door, wood windows, vinyl siding. Again, a lot of those projects, it may make sense to, I guess, just sell versus improve and not get your money back, right? That one's cool. I like those ones. U.S. price indexes of houses under construction. Skip some of that. New family up. Builder confidence. This was a great one to see. Just they survey builders and their confidence of, building homes, right? So we really got low right after COVID and then right at the very end of the year. But we've seen significantly increases over the last 6 months, which is positive. It's still not 90, but even 55 as of the end of June. positive. And what I don't know is how far they're looking out. Is this right now building, or is this kind of them developing projects which are going to come online a year from now or something? They're always having to look out 2-3 years ahead of a lot of other people, but that's an improvement. And then wrapping it up, we only go over this once a year. This is all just at the end of 2022, US events that come from NAR surveys that Keller Williams puts together in a very organized fashion. But if you want to go back, download these, review these slides, size, volume, listings, new listings, all that stuff. They've got a whole bunch of other categories you can kind of see on those. So you can do that on your homework. Gordon, Robin, any final comments wrapping us up?
I would just go through this and determine what's the strategy, what are the skills that you need to build, understanding the market that we're currently operating in and what we're headed into, and then truly go through those slides, see what needs to be added to your listing presentation, to your buyer presentation. I always keep a folder in my phone in the photos of the slides that are most pertinent, so that when I'm having a conversation with someone, I can say, well, hey, I actually was at this market update report. Let me show you what I mean by this. And you have the data to pull out and show them quickly.
Yeah. Gordon, any wrap up?
I would say just stop paying attention to the crash bros, and the media always wants to make things worse for the shock factor. We're recovering, and hopefully we'll not see a huge crash anytime soon.
Cool. Well, thank you for being on here. I actually do love that it forces me to stay in the data and be prepared to go present this. Force yourself to stay in this. So no doubt, present this to people, teach a class in your office or share it with someone. It really does help kind of retain it. So thank you for being on. And again, if you have any other sources out there that are incredibly reliable, that you think is just great, cool data for us to add to this, reach out to us. We'd love to do that. I know a handful of you have done that. It's been very helpful to keep compiling on this. So all right, thank you, everybody.
To get us Washington County data so that you don't have to needle Gordon about that.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. If I don't see you tomorrow, we'll have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Thanks for being on. See you.
Thank you.